Thank you, Virginie. I'm really grateful for all the kind words. And thank you, PIDW, for inviting me. It's definitely an intimidating session here with so many high-powered people. Sorry, can you hear me? With such a heavy horsepower. I will do my best to give a basic landscape of construction industry in Pakistan as we understand it in the business. As a company that mostly focuses on the non-government sector, we have just chosen to not go into a lot of the government projects because first of all we don't do any horizontal work. We do mostly vertical construction, and there aren't too many government projects of the size that we wanted to focus on. However, issues we have in Pakistan in general apply across the board, in my view, to all projects, regardless of the size, in terms of contracts. The overall landscape, if we can break it down into three components: the government component, the private sector, and then what I call the third one, which is basically foreign entities working in Pakistan, embassies, Khan Foundation, World Bank, those kind of institutions, or organizations that are developing projects in Pakistan. There are a number of companies that are working in Pakistan. 18 is one of them. They do a lot of big development in Islamabad. There's Imad that is working in Karachi. So the overall landscape that you see here is that you have contracts which are different for pretty much every project. Now, I think there have been a lot of attempts to pull all these things together. Of course, there are the guidelines for government projects from the PPRAs, the Public Procurement Regulatory Authorities. Those are also now split between the federal and the state regulatory authorities, but they are guidelines based on which the government comes up with their own contracts for individual departments of the government. In the private sector, it's the same thing. Every client has their own set of contracts, their own set of terms, and the attempt has been made several times, I'd say, unsuccessfully maybe, but there is a standard document that is in place for contracts that is available at the Pakistan Engineering Council, which is the regulator for the whole construction sector. But that is not really followed across the board, for sure, not followed across the board, but is rarely followed by anybody. So the question arises, why is it that we are not able to come up with a single or a small set of contracts that are the basis for work going forward, whether it's a large project or a small one? I think it's very hard to sort of explain to people who are used to working in, like you are, in a country where the universe of opportunities is really very large. I'm a construction company. There are 500 projects out there, and I can just focus on the 10 that make sense to me because the contract terms are in favor of the way I want to do my work. That, unfortunately, is not the case in Pakistan. We don't have a large number of projects available from where I can select what suits me and what suits somebody else. So we all end up bidding for projects and not being in a position to challenge any significant terms in the draft contracts being offered, because we know that if I challenge a particular section, I will not be able to get the job because somebody else who's also desperate to get a piece of the pie will probably accept it and move on. And it does happen in this industry. So what we do, and I'm not saying this is the right approach, but what we do is we basically take the risk. We will go ahead with the assumption that the terms in the contract will never come to fruition because you're just getting your job done, you're doing your work, you're getting paid, and the contract ends. In a lot of cases, it does. But there are problems that happen in every contract, and there are certain, the nature of certain problems which are grouped together. For example, a typical private sector entity that has decided to put up a skyscraper. Now, they have done all their homework. They have engaged a designer that does all the numbers and does the design and everything. So they come up with their business case on the basis of all that homework that was done. Now, it turns out that during the process, there is an issue and there is a major variation order coming up. Now, this private sector entity is not, has not budgeted for that extra expense. So we end up in a dispute situation. So it's a strange, in my view, it's a very strange dispute because it should be obvious that if something which was not in the design, we are doing that, somebody's got to pay for it. But then they're going to dispute about, oh, you know, on the one hand, you were late on this thing, so can we not, you know, accept this thing, give us a bigger lift, and, you know, because we didn't have the budget for this particular size of lift and stuff like that. So those are things that we have, we do come up with, and in most cases, I think I'd say for most contractors here, they don't go into any kind of litigation. You know, they try and resolve it. Personally, Astral has never been in any litigation. There's another reason which I think is very important and is very frustrating, is that even if there is absolutely no reason for you not to go into litigation, it's your right, you've got a problem or dispute resolution. The fact that every pre-qualification document requires you to state whether you are in litigation, were in litigation, is enough for me to say, just let go, because we cannot afford not to be qualified, you know, by somebody, because in the pre-qualification we stated that we are in a dispute situation. So, you know, those are kind of issues that we have in Pakistan, and I think going towards solution, yes, we do need an Arbitration Act for sure, which I think we have now. However, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer, so let me make sure that I don't say anything which is kind of obvious to the legal community, but if there is a clause in a contract that we have that can be overridden by another statute or some other mechanism, so that we don't have to worry about the fact that I have a very tight clause here that I can actually go to court and say, hey, you cannot actually enforce this on me because there is another overriding statute. So I think something like that would be required to take some of this fear out of contractors to go in and you know, ask for their rights. You know. Okay, I think it's a good question. I know that where you're coming from, that question makes a lot of sense. Okay. But from where I am, it doesn't make a lot of sense for several reasons. One of them is that, as I mentioned, that the pie is so small that the clients, in most cases, I shouldn't say clients, the advisors, the consultants who prepared all these documents, they pretty much know that, you know, hey, they're all going to bid. Anybody who qualifies in terms of their size and stuff, they will bid because they don't have a choice. I think the second thing is, as far as I understand, the industry, the construction industry, from a client perspective, in Pakistan is not leveraged at all. I don't know of any project that I worked on where a project was conceived from money borrowed from the banks or borrowed from somebody else. So there's no, it sounds very strange to, I know I've talked to people you know, from other countries to find it very strange, but the reality is that because it's not leveraged, the desire to get the project done on time is not really as powerful as it would be in some other countries. Like, you know, in England, nobody just says, okay, here's $20 million, build me something. It's always, there's a bank behind it that, you know, funds it. We don't have that in Pakistan. So yeah, the client is just not pressured. Things are getting delayed. You would think common sense would tell you, hey, if you're building a hotel and you're 6 months late, you've lost 6 months of revenue. But it doesn't work in Pakistan. I just don't know how to explain that, but it doesn't work. We've worked on lots of projects which are late, and I have had discussions with guys saying, look, this is such a small dispute. For you, it's a small amount, but for us, it's a percentage of our profits, which are already quite low. Why are you letting this thing go on and on? But, you know, that's the way it is. I don't know who agrees with me, but that's how I see it. Yes. So subcontracting, we do very little subcontracting, but we have done it. Subcontracting carries the risk of the prime contractor passing things back and forth between the client and the subcontractor. I mean, I'm talking about a major subcontractor. And that's also, in most subcontracts, it's written in a way that a problem that they have with the client, they just pass it on to the subcontractors. And so now that gets even more complicated. Now you have to worry about the contractor and sort the mess out with him. And then you have to also worry about the client, because in the end it's the client that wants that thing done. And a lot of these things are based on design issues. We don't have, again, cultural thing, but design coordination in Pakistan is a big problem. We do not, as a contracting construction company, we do not normally get well coordinated designs. So we know going in that there's going to be problems. But what can you do? You have to take the job. As I said, again, it's the same thing. You have a pie that so many people are after that you don't have a choice. Okay, I'm going to be hated by a lot of people when I answer this question. But another cultural thing that we found, maybe we don't know how to do things right, but what we found is that when you start documenting stuff, which is what is required,
yes.
For us to cover ourselves from any potential risks, is not liked. Design. If you try and document something that questions, a missing duct in a building, because you realize that there's a problem here, the designer is not going to be very happy with you, and the designers mostly are also the people who are managing the project. So you have to, you actually have to play this game. I don't know how many construction people are out here who can maybe agree with me. Then you have to play this game of how do you solve the problem without documenting too much even against the, forget about the client, but if you're a subcontractor, against the prime contractor or the designer. Because the risk of offending the person and thereby making things worse down the road is quite high. And I think, again, we go back to the fact that you took a contract which in the first place was heavily not in your favor, because you had no choice. So you kind of, it's a game.